Nation, they are all about the end of an era from 1926 to 2022. Queen Elizabeth II. Well, the last rites, Britain says farewell to Queen Elizabeth II at a historic state funeral attended by world leaders. Among them, of course, was their new president, William Ruto, as the country marched charged since the Queen's coronation in 1953 digs deep into its centuries of tradition to honor the only monarch most of its citizens have ever known. And there is quite a picture over there that is definitely summarizing whatever it is they're talking about. That and many more stories in the Daily Nation this morning. So yes, go on and grab yourself a copy of all these three papers to catch up on what's happening. Well, still talking about what's happening, going to the traffic updates this morning, coming in from areas of Chiwatule, Nigeria, areas surrounding Nadia as you're headed, of course, towards Namugongo or making your way to town. I could say that quite a lot of traffic, especially coming in from Chiwatule. I want to be quite very specific when it comes to this very road where there is too much traffic that is already heavy by the minute. The red is very dominant over here from Chiwatule, connecting all the way. I could say that this road here is maybe a no-go area. If there is a plan B, I would advise that you go for it. However, if this is the main road that you have to go through, well, you have to dread the traffic. It is already heavily built onto it, and it continues all the way as, of course, you're making your way to town. But also getting onto Mbogo Road. Mbogo Road is not any different this morning. The traffic is quite evident. We do have here for both, by the way, sides, whether you are leaving or you are headed towards this direction, you will be expecting some traffic hiccups here and there, and that is Mbogo Road one for you. Switching up to Buwate Road is quite very busy. Very many motorists actually use it. The other day there were pictures showing how bad it was doing because of the nature of the road and also the rain. So it is something you have to, you know, prepare yourself for mentally to know that you will be, of course, coming face to face with some traffic hindrances here and there as it is building up, and any minute now it could actually become heavier than it already is. And as, of course, you are headed towards Namugongo Road, you'll be facing some traffic over here getting into the Namugongo Trading Center. Of course, if you're connecting in from Chira town, if you're connecting in from Bogo Road, if you're connecting in from other places, Namugongo over here, as you're making your way towards Chireka, well, you do expect that traffic over there. However, also crossing over to Nalia after taking it off from Namugongo Trading Center, Nalia Road is very busy, very busy and heavy. With the traffic, we do have red stretches for the biggest part or for the longest parts of this same road, and in some other areas we do have the traffic that is also starting to build up. So I could say that all the residents of Nalia, this one is going to be a very busy morning for you, so you need to prepare for it. You do have a plan B, well, you ought to use that. And if you're using Banda to connect and come out of Banda stage, I could say that this road over here is actually quite free, so it would be easier for you to navigate as you're making your way to Chambogo, through Chambogo to get to the Banda main stage, which obviously is part of the Jinja Kampala highway. So maybe this could be the ideal route. It doesn't have heavy traffic as yet, but in some areas it's already starting to build up. And of course, when you join the main road, which is Kampala Jinja highway, you will be expecting traffic at several spots because the oranges are quite also dominant, meaning that the traffic is starting to build up in those areas. However, any minute now, they could become heavier and become red, meaning that traffic is still continuing to grow. The day is quite early. It's about 7:45 a.m. And also we know that as the weather that comes in, the weather changes that do come in as the day go by, they also quite dictate the kind of traffic. But also just a word of advice, yesterday we did see quite a number of traffic operations on several parts of the roads. Very many people did fall victim. Please go and pay your tickets. certificates, go and renew your insurance, that third party, do what is necessary for you to, make sure you are on the right side of the law. You don't want your day to be inconvenienced just because you failed to do your part. That's it from the traffic updates this morning. I am Philomena. I now leave you with Mollen to give us quite some more information and news coming in from weather and climate. Good morning.
Well, thank you very much, Philomena. I want to take it from there. Now, we have been talking about a very interesting topic this morning about conserving trees, but it also goes to show you how much there is actually a lot of contribution, especially at a time where we're looking at extinction of certain species. Now, we might be worried for ourselves because of climate change as human beings or, animal species, but how about these plants, and how far can they go in terms of sustaining life on Earth? That is where the trees come in. Now, it's not enough that we ask people to actually plant trees, but can they grow up? Are you able to take care of them? Now, I found a very interesting picture this morning, of course, that was talking about how to plant a tree and believe in tomorrow. Well, while you plant a tree, make sure you're able to take care of it before you can actually get the fruits for it, before you can actually have it to conserve your environment. It must be taken care of. Which is why we have seen a lot of campaigns going around, especially, about planting a tree. Some of these campaigns go a long way to show you that actually when you plant a tree and you're able to give it a name and take care of it, maybe you have better chances of actually, preserving this tree. And this is some of the things that we should actually be doing, especially now that we're talking about a world where there is more in cutting down the trees than replanting them, what we would call reforestation. That has been kind of a myth in our era. You look at the fact that people do cut down these trees on huge masses, but replanting them is the problem, and that is why we're also contributing to the variations in our climate, because at least what we know is that these trees influence the weather that we have. And I'll give you an example. You look at areas that are close to forests, like mostly western Uganda. You look at also places that are surrounding trees actually have more rains compared to the rest of the country, meaning that these trees go a long way into influencing the weather. Even the biggest weather system, rainy systems that we get across the country from the Congo forests, of course, that means that that is one thing that is fueling into our rains. Now, once we take away that kind of nature part, then we risk having fewer rains or even interrupting with our seasons in terms of rainy conditions. And this is why we continue to say, look, it's no wonder the study came out to indicate that right now we're looking at more of the species dying out or getting extinct because of climate change. So meaning that it is up to us to actually make sure that we are planting more of certain trees that will be sustainable in long run, also give us more potential to fight climate change. But also more of what is coming through. We're following up on a story about a hurricane that did hit most areas within Puerto Rico as well as Dominican Republic. What we do know is that Hurricane Fiona has made landfall, did make landfall yesterday, bringing with it strong winds, flooding, and of course mudslides across Dominican Republic as well as Puerto Rico. Now, what is being reported is that this actually landed with northwesterly winds about 9 miles per hour, and of course that is towards the Grand Turk Island, that is across Dominica, but also this did cut across towards Haiti. Right now as we speak, after all those hours of tracking it down, it has extended towards areas of Haiti, bringing with it strong winds and rains. Now that is what is creating floods right now. Now, reports coming in showing that so far the aftermath of the hurricane has not been really established. Apart from the mudslides and the destruction that we know so far, there hasn't been any confirmed number of deaths over the area. Now, it did land as Category 1 hurricane. That's at least not as strong as it would be for a hurricane of that nature. That means that it minimizes the damage. And of course, also the fact that evacuations were done before, after this hurricane was forecast to make landfall. It marks, one that has hit this area for the past couple of months. And of course, that means that all rescue operations are still ongoing to ascertain the damage from this hurricane. Now, it was forecast actually to be landing towards this area. Now, effects are also being felt across Cuba and also Miami, bringing in just a few rains, but the course of this hurricane just extends all the way from Dominican Republic going towards the Bermuda area. That is forecast to be there at least by Friday. Now Tuesday it extends towards Takas and Caicos. Those are the islands close to Dominican Republic that are already expected to have also strong winds. By Wednesday it will be going up to 120 miles per hour, and Thursday it continues through the area. Now it is expected that this will actually be bringing in most of strong winds and rains. Now the good part is that at least by Thursday the areas that are expected to be in its pathway are just on the waters on the Atlantic Ocean, so meaning that damage will be minimized at least until Friday when it makes landfall over there. But also the forecast has been extensive, meaning that at least evacuations should be done with time to reduce damage, especially when it comes to saving lives, because the property cannot be saved, especially if you look at the way most of these hurricanes do hit. They bring with them very, very strong forces, and it's very hard to get rid of its effects for sure. But all these are getting more frequent and more rampant. We have seen just last week, we're also talking about the typhoons that were hitting Japan, one in Chinese province as well. These are all just being frequent across many areas. Not to mention that that has also been coupled with heat wave events, wildfires across the country, which scientists are coming up to connect dots to the climate variations that are still continuing across various places within the world. But also away from that, we also want to take a look at what is happening across the country. In former satellites, we can ascertain that we already have mostly a sunny day. It looks like it's bright and clear, quite a very good morning. I should say, different from what we've been experiencing the last couple of days. It looks like the country is beginning with mostly sunny weather that is mixed with a little bit of intervals of cloudy weather, especially across Lake Victoria Basin. Otherwise, most of us will be continuing with most of those sunny conditions even for the rest of the morning. I'll tell you what, it looks like that could also be crossing over into the afternoon for most areas, especially across the northern Uganda and a few areas within the eastern part of the country. But later in the afternoon we could be expecting rains, especially across southwestern parts of Lake Victoria Basin as well. Now for now, we'll go ahead and take a look at the forecast that is coming in for this morning. That is from the Uganda National Meteorological Authority, and also look at those numbers. Now starting off with the western side of Lake Victoria Basin, that is across Masaka, Kalisi, Zusemba, Bulerakai. We do expect to have a little bit of rains as the morning progresses. Those will be across a few areas though, and also starting off with a chilly 24 degrees. Southwestern Uganda, that is across Mbara, Ibanda, Bushenyi and Rurizi, we're also forecasting light rains. Those will be over a few areas and only for a small time. That is across southwestern Uganda, starting off with a chilly 25. Now more of those rains will be developing later in the afternoon. The eastern side of Lake Victoria, starting off with a mix of clouds and sunshine with quite a warm 27 degrees centigrade. We also expect similar weather later in the afternoon with mostly intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. Now the eastern parts of Central, where we have Ruwero, Woblen, Zibururi, Nakaseke, we're also forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine. We already have sunny weather over there. Looks like that will be continuing for your entire morning, also starting off with quite a chilly 25. Now eastern Uganda, Soroti, Katakwi, Amuria and Kumi also forecasting mostly a sunny morning for you. We'll be having those clouds a little bit, but it will be a warm morning for you at 27. Also that is expected to continue into the afternoon, so most likely you will be dealing with quite a warm day with lots of sun for today. Now the central parts of northern Uganda are also expected to start off with a mix of clouds and sunshine at a warm 27. We're also expecting to have more of those temperatures going up by the end of the day into the upper 20s, and also likely to continue with that mix of clouds and sunshine later in the afternoon. Now the central part of Lake Victoria Basin, that is where we have Mukono, Kampala, Entebbe and Wakiso, we're forecasting light showers. Those will be across just a few areas, especially those close to Lake Victoria, and also starting off with quite a chilly 25 degrees centigrade. We do expect a little bit of rain to develop later in the afternoon, but that will be also over the islands and a few areas. Nothing much to get in the day, although we still continue with that rainy season, meaning that all these rains could pop up anytime, especially for areas within the southern part of the country as well as the western sector. Otherwise, it looks like it's quite a pleasant morning for you today. At least we do expect that. But also we continue to tell you to be aware that we still continue with that rainy season. So meaning rains are still on the way. So if you're going ahead with planting, with all your farming activities, please go ahead, as we do expect these rains to continue until late December, as the forecast did indicate. Well, that is it in terms of weather for this morning. Later than this, we will be having Good Morning Uganda agenda. And also after that, we'll be diving into sports. Ruben will be here to take you through that. Otherwise, I want to wish you a wonderful day. My name is Mollen, Kenyena.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Every waking day is a reminder just how beautiful this, our land, truly is. The kind of beauty that you can only find here, in the lush green all around us and the wondrous sights within. It's in the distinct aroma of our cooking, to the taste of food that takes you on a journey, in the sound of homecoming and the sound of Mother Earth, in the magnificence we find on our travels and the exciting moments we experience. Ours is the kind of beauty that comes in all things big and small. All we have to do is awaken our senses and truly enjoy what's uniquely ours. Explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
Welcome to English in a Minute. If you're broke, you have little or no money. Am I going to have to help Jonathan or Anna pay a bill?
Well, Jonathan, I'm doing it. I'm joining the circus.
Excuse me?
That's right. But not just any circus. The Cirque du Soleil.
You got into Cirque.
Well, not yet. But I already told my boss that I'm quitting, and I found someone to move into my apartment. Montreal, here I come.
Wow, you're really going for broke.
When you go for broke, you take a big risk in hopes of having a big success. This phrase comes from gambling, when a player bets all their money at once. If they win big. But if they lose, they really do go broke. And that's English in a Minute.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN cupboard. That's super easy.
Oh, Susan, I want to propose to Rose. Yes, and this time I am serious.
Have you guys had sex?
Duh, of course.
And have you had sex without using condoms?
Hey, Nga, you're curious.
I'm more concerned. Are you having sex with other people?
Hey, hello, is this an interview or what?
No, just things you should think about. Do you know Rose's HIV status?
Okay, this is serious. Should I be worried?
It is actually serious. Do you know your HIV status?
I think I am safe. Many times we get into situations that put us at risk of HIV. However, the first step to ending HIV is getting tested and knowing your results.
It's Time Up HIV. Call 0800-211-046 or text 8080 toll-free for more information about how to prevent HIV.
This message is brought to you by Ministry of Health with support from USAID. When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
I remember the lockdown, when the streets were empty and our lives disrupted, when businesses closed and our livelihoods hung in the balance. Hospitals were full. We lost loved ones, jobs, and hope. Our children couldn't study anymore. We cannot let this happen again. We should not go back. Get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and join the millions of Ugandans who are already vaccinated.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Thank you for being with us from the hour of 6:30 till today. It's fairly a bright morning here in Kampala, and I don't know what the weather is where you are, but the good news is Good Morning Uganda always makes it a must to ensure that you're well versed with the weather with Mollen, Kenyena. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda Agenda. Now what we do here, we have guests in studios and we discuss issues of national concern. Now, this time around, we are going to be looking at persons with disabilities, but to be very specific, those are persons with hearing impairments. And just remind you, we are in the International Deaf Awareness Week, which commenced on the 19th of this month. And this week is going to be continuing with a series of activities. What we are looking at is building inclusive, that is communities for all. Uganda Sign Language Unites. We are looking at how do we ensure that in every area we include people that have a disability where they cannot hear, but they are able to live their full potential because of sign language. And that explains, when you look on the set this morning, I have, that is Wycliffe Bukenya, who happens to be my sign language, that is interpreter this morning. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Then on my immediate side, I have Achayo Rose Oboy, who is the council member of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. A lovely morning to you, madam.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers.
And you're most welcome to us.
Thank you.
Now, I want to begin by understanding, when we talk about persons with hearing impairments, we know disability anyone can get a disability at any point in time. An accident, you may be born with it, get an illness, so we are all vulnerable to any form of disability. But when we talk about this community of people, look at our population, how big is the problem? Or how many people do we have that have disabilities? And if you can, also specifically with persons with hearing impairments.
Okay, thank you so much, viewers. First of all, I would like to say briefly about the council. The National Council for Persons with Disabilities was established in 2003 and re-established in 2020 by Act of Parliament. And just as you are saying, this week is a special week for persons with hearing impairment, because we are celebrating both the deaf, but also we are celebrating the language that they use, because the two cannot be separated. So Deaf Awareness Week is a special day, just as you have stated it. It's a day that started on the 19th, and it is running to its climax on 23rd, which will be celebrated in Uganda as the national venue. So deaf people are people who have hearing impairment, and because of the hearing impairment, the language that they understand best is sign language. And that is a very important language for deaf people. And as government of Uganda, we have recognized it in the Constitution as one of the languages that is spoken in Uganda. So the deaf people use that language for their means of communication. So for us as National Council for Persons with Disabilities, we promote and protect persons with disabilities, inclusive with people with hearing impairment, to ensure that they access services.
So do you have the statistics of the people you're responsible for, or you don't have any of these?
Yeah, we have a starting point. Okay. That we may not be having very clear statistics, but as government of Uganda, government has tried. And we can say the population of persons with disabilities in total is 12.4%. And for deaf people, we can say it's about 3.4% of the Ugandan population.
12.4% persons with disabilities, then
3.4% is for the deaf persons, so people with hearing impairment.
Now, that rightly said, let's look at first two things here. We are looking at the language and the people.
Yes, please.
Now, help us understand, is this language, because when I look at the theme, it is building inclusive communities for all Uganda, for all Ugandans. Sign language unites us. But there is a word that is Uganda Sign Language. Is sign language universal, or do countries have their individual sign language?
Thank you so much. Just as you have seen the theme, it's talking about Ugandan Sign Language. First of all, we need to understand that sign language is a language, just like any other languages in the world. And because it's a language, so it varies from country to country. And that's why the theme for this year is focusing on the Ugandan Sign Language. So I must say that sign language differs, but we have standard universal sign language. And there are people who have specialization in those standard sign language. Why am I saying this? You know, there are very many deaf people who have not gone to school. So there are those who really have their very local signs within their local context. But for this one, as you note, that Uganda National Deaf Association, they have come out with sign language dictionary with support from Chambogo University. So at least we have a standard Ugandan sign language that any deaf Ugandan should be able to use that sign language.
Rose, that well explained. In this week, what do you want to bring out? When you talk about inclusion, what level of inclusion, and also what haven't we done in terms of inclusion? I know, for example, there is so much in broadcast. It is a requirement that media must have translators or interpreters, sign language interpreters. This I see usually on news. Recently, I saw you appeal for health facilities. So what areas do you feel are very vital where this inclusion should be put in place urgently?
Thank you so much. First of all, you need to understand persons with disabilities generally are human beings like any other person, and they are Ugandan citizens. So it's the same with the deaf persons, that deaf persons are Ugandans, deaf persons are human beings, and the need for inclusion becomes cross-cutting in all issues when it comes to health, education, water and sanitation, agriculture, everything. In all walks of life, inclusion must happen. So when we are talking about deaf people, for example, we take note that government has got very many programs for Ugandans. And I want to give an example of the parish development model. So when we are talking about inclusiveness, how inclusive are the deaf people in these government programs? So for us as the council, we really want to see such opportunities being tapped by all persons with disabilities, and in this particular, the deaf people, that they should be able to access the information that makes them understand the program, but also make them to participate effectively. So when we are talking about inclusiveness, inclusiveness must be in totality. First of all, as a government, we have seen government has really tried to do a lot in terms of communication. And I appreciate UBC that even when we are having this conversation this morning, we are able to have a sign language interpreter who is able to make the deaf communities outside there get to understand and appreciate the conversations that we are having in the television station now. So sign language is very important for inclusion of deaf people. And you have seen it is a requirement that in all TV stations we must have sign language interpreters. And this is about inclusion. It's not just a show. It's really about inclusion. So we want to appreciate this kind of commitment by government. But outside there, as a council, we still feel that there may be still some gaps, that the community outside there should be able to, first of all, understand that we have deaf people in the communities living with them. How do they accept them? How do they appreciate them? And how do we make the deaf people be part of the community so that they are able to feel that, yes, we are all one Ugandans? Yes.
Rightly said, how do we have them in communities? How do we make them feel that they're all Ugandans? This brings me to a very important issue. We have stigma.
Stigma, yes.
If there is any challenge persons with various disabilities face, is stigma. Sometimes language we use You know, some of it sounds even very abusive. For example, when you are referring to a person who has a disability, they can't hear, they can't speak. In some communities, the word is very bad. I can't even use it on set today. So, what are we doing, even before we talk about those that have issues with hearing and the language, what is being done to fight stigma, to ensure that these children are educated, to ensure that these children we are talking about, or these persons, when they are young, they can even get this language? Because I know many deaf people, many people with hearing impairments, that even if you use signs, they may not understand the sign language. They are rendered out. Also, they are kept in families, even in backyards. Even when there is a function, they are not brought to the table. So how do we look at this element? Because without fighting stigma, then all this issue of language, if a person is kept closed in a room, well, they access the language and all that.
Yeah, thank you so much, moderator. You have talked about stigma. You know, stigma is a very bad thing, and you have rightly said that when people are kept, you know, by isolating a person, the person feels he or she is either not a human being, and because of that isolation, that is where the stigma starts. Because you feel you are not accepted, you feel you are not wanted, you feel you are not recognized. And this brings in stigma because of the attitude, and this stigma starts right from the family. And you know, once a person is not accepted from the family, then you get to know even outside there, they may not be able to accept you.
Yes.
So how do we deal with stigma? I think one of the things that makes this day very special is really to create awareness to the community outside there, but also to the deaf people. That, you know, these are people, they only have unique needs, and these unique needs to be addressed. And what is the unique need here is the language. The language that does not allow them to be able to express just like the way I am speaking now. So because of that, then the issue of the sign language, it is a silent one. So somebody should be able to learn this language. And I think this is the only language that they can use. If people think because you cannot speak, because a person cannot speak, then just as you said, they start using very abusive language. And you don't need to fear, because this is to create awareness. You don't need to call somebody who cannot speak and hear a stupid person. You don't need to call such a person a mad person or a stupid person. So we all need decent language when you are referring to us, because everyone in a society want that dignity. And dignity is what portrays one to have self-esteem. So once the person has stigma, the person will always be very low. The person will always not want to identify within. And one of the things that we see with deaf people, because of the language, they will always want to be very low.
Very low and very quiet.
And very
well,
quiet.
That takes me for a short break, and I'll be having another guest join me in this discussion of creating awareness about sign language and persons with hearing impairments. We'll return shortly.
from Now Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.
It's back! After 2 years away, the Uganda International Trade Fair is back. The Uganda Manufacturers Association excitedly invites you to the 28th Uganda International Trade Fair from October 3rd to October 10th. Visit more than 1,000 manufacturers, traders, distributors, and business people from all sectors at the Uma Showgrounds in Lugogo. We are back to innovation, products, and world-class manufacturing excellence. Entrance fee is 10,000 shillings only. Select manufacturers will offer discounted prices of up to 50%. Enjoy live performances from your favorite artists as we celebrate 60 years of Uganda's independence. To book spares, call 0703 552 444.
I remember the lockdown, when the streets were empty and our lives disrupted, when businesses closed and our livelihoods hung in the balance. Hospitals were full. We lost loved ones, jobs, and hope. Our children couldn't study anymore. We cannot let this happen again. We should not go back. Get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and join the millions of Ugandans who are already vaccinated.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Welcome back from that short break. Thank you for keeping it with us. In case you've just joined, we are looking at the International Deaf Awareness Week, which began on the 19th of this very month, and it is a week long full of activity to create awareness regarding persons with hearing impairments and of course sign language as a tool of communication for these people. And like I told you, we got this break to have one of the people in this field who better understand it to join the set, and that is Nkwangu Robert, who is the Executive Director, Uganda National Association of Deaf Persons. You're most welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. Good morning and happy to join this talk show. It's a privilege to be hosted, and greetings viewers, good morning to you all.
Just to get it from what we had previously, we want to understand better. When we talk about sign language, how available, how accessible, how affordable is it in this country? Because we know this is something that a person with an hearing impairment does not get to know naturally, but it must be taught and it must be well understood.
Oh yes, Thank you very much, moderator. I'm happy to say that sign language, first of all, just like my partner said in the panel, is within our constitution of Uganda. And so just like any other language, sign language it's just like English, just like Luganda, just like Nyonyintono. But as deaf people, we do use sign language. It is our mode of communication. It is that language which has its own grammar, which has its own vocabularies, and which has its own mode of expression. It has its own linguistics, and it has everything. So we look at people who speak different local languages. Equally, sign language is another language. It's a language you may not be able to understand because it's a language that is of signs. We are on this panel, we can understand each other because of an interpreter. So interpreters are professional people, it's professional work. Because sign language is taught in the university and people graduate into the same. Then after they can go out there and work and become fully sign language interpreters and are paid by their work. So they do help to translate from audio to visual language, and sign language is not equally international because each own country has their own sign languages. That's why it's quite very important to see that as the different service providers, they do have sign language interpretation as a component in accessing services. Take an example, those of health, in education, the workplaces, but most importantly, most people say interpretation is quite very expensive. Take an example. If I've employed Robert, I have to pay the sign language interpreter as well, and they feel very, very expensive. But I think that's not an issue, that's not a justification, because accessibility to information is a human right to everyone, because it is embedded in our Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and Persons with Disabilities Act as well, amended of 2020. So the government and service providers all must make sure that there is an element of inclusion in whatever services are given out there for the interest of all the people as a whole, because one of accessing information by people like me is through sign language, because most of my people like me, they cannot comprehend the written literature, because close to 90% of people like me have never gone to school. And what we depend on is a language, which language is a sign language. So information of sign language is very expressive in nature.
Okay. Yes. Now, let's also look at the fact you talked about government providing these interpreters. But let's look at the people themselves, people that have hearing impairments. How, this is what I want to know better, how do they, because I don't believe by having a disability, then you automatically learn the language. So I want to know, for these people we have just talked about, how is it accessible? Because it will be it beats my understanding when you find a person with a hearing impairment, but Robert is translating or interpreting and they can't understand the interpretation. So how available are these services for the people with these problems to access these languages? I've seen parents, they have issues. They don't know the language and they'll tell you it's expensive for me to go and study, and I can speak with my child. Some have these children who even also don't know the language.
Oh yes, thank you very much. First, a language must be learned, right? Just like a parent gives birth to a baby boy or a girl, and they begin talking straight away, in Uganda, Nyonyintono, and all that, until this child is growing up, is learning a language. It begins from the parents. However, for the deaf children, it's quite different, because, like you said, and you're very, very right, the parents don't know sign language, the families don't know sign language. So when the deaf child is born, begins acquiring a language at school, right? Now, as UNAD, Uganda National Association of the Deaf, we do train sign language to these children and of course their family members, equally to their parents. You're very, very right when you say that many children don't know sign language. You're absolutely right. It's quite very important for you and I to teach them sign language before going to school, because at school we are introduced into English, and the talk show having right now is in English. But then why did you learn this English? You didn't learn it here. It is from school. So that's also the deaf children need to learn the language like English from school, because at home they need to learn the sign language. So as you know, we developed different materials that we use to teach these children, and it's quite important, a very, very big step. But the problem we are having is that 90% have never gone to school. Then how is government going to come in? Because we have NCD, the council is here, and then they're asking where are sign language interpreters, where are the families of the people. So because there's a very big problem that government needs to interface and find solutions to. That's a very big issue, yes.
When we talk about Rose, now I'm coming to you, when we talk about building inclusive communities for all, Uganda Sign Language unites us. We've known that we have a challenge. First, with resources to ensure that people get services of interpreters. If you are to say for any school or any class to have an interpreter, I don't think we even have much of them. That would be one problem. But two, there are costs. I've ever been part of a function and we wanted services of people like Wycliffe there, and we were given a budget and we said no, let's do without it, because we couldn't afford, given the stringent budget we had. So how do we realize this? Don't you think that maybe you're asking for so much, despite it being a constitutional right? You have them in hospitals, have them in schools. Recently I saw, I think it was the council or the National Association for Persons that are Deaf, they had gone to court saying this should be in health centers. You have health center 2s, 3s. How realistic, how possible can we have this, much as it is a constitutional right?
Okay, thank you so much. Just as you have said and Robert has said, truly sign language looks expensive, but since it's issue of human right, I think as the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, there is need to make regulations. These regulations should be able to help see government embed sign language into public service. For example, we should be able to see sign language being employed by government of Uganda. We should be able to see sign language being in health centers and all these other health facilities, because these people need to access this. So we don't need, I think, to say cost. Government is willing and should be able to take it as a sustainable thing by recruiting this sign language into the government structures. But also we want to really see that people with deafness should be able to access services without incurring a lot of costs. And as council, we want to ensure that people with deafness access these services. And for me, one thing that I would do, we would say is that maybe government, we need to, one, include sign language in the curriculum, so that almost everybody gets to know sign language, because it is a language like English.
So we study it like we study English?
Yes, we study it as we study English. But also too, maybe government needs to be training, if for time being, for those who are already outside it, to train professionals in sign language so that they are able to communicate. You know, we are talking about health. And when a patient is interacting with a medical doctor or a health personnel, there is always that confidentiality that they need to have. So I think it is always very important that as a way of inclusion of deaf people, the professionals need to learn some basic sign language. But also the other thing is that we have talked about how some of these deaf people who have not gone to school, how can they also communicate? I think one thing is that we used to have functional adult literacy. Maybe we also need to incorporate this sign language into the functional adult literacy so that the parents, the community, and then the deaf people who have not gone to school should be able to get that. Yes.
Well, one of that adult literacy, but also Rose's proposal that maybe in the school, one of the additions to the subjects we are doing should be sign language. I don't know how there, if we shall have enough trainers in all schools in Uganda to do that. And this brings me to ask Robert, one of the things we want, how available are these people? Away from affordability, how available? Do you have enough people? If you have some of these, some of the things you're agitating or calling upon government to do you have enough sign language interpreters? If we say health facilities, we say courts, we talk about schools, we talk about, I remember during the time of COVID-19, some of these people who couldn't hear, some had issues. Because maybe we've had some accidents, maybe because this person could not hear. So how available, in case you are to roll out this, are we standing as a country to have enough people to help in this?
Well, thank you, moderator. Wonderful question. First, the answer is sign language interpreters are there. The university has been rolling out, I think, very many, close to 800 or so. And there are different institutions also that are teaching sign language. And each year, interpreters do graduate. And some have learned from different countries and have flown back into the country. But the problem is the inclusion of sign language interpretation into government structures, into public structures. That's the missing gap. I think the issue is not about the cost. It shouldn't be about the cost. But maybe the issue is about awareness and how it can be done. Take an example. There's a school A. School A has 50 teachers, right? If 2 out of the 50 are interpreters, what is the problem? Right? Look at the medical centers. How many staff do these centers have? 1,000, 100, all are working in the hospital. Why not 1% out of 100 be sign language users? Right? So that's the question that I'm saying. I'm thinking about when we talk of the budget. The budget has to be inclusive because all people need to access services equally. If take an example, the education budget or the health budget, if there's an element, a percentage for disability services that is catered for, and sign language is under that budget, it can be even less than 1%. It doesn't need a lot of money, less than 1%. So the issue of cost shouldn't be the debate. But like I said, also the teachers of sign language, we have them. I'm happy that government is trying to roll out sign language But we humbly request government to work with us, because we are the users, right? We are the users of these services of sign language, and we can help government to make this better. Take an example, Wycliffe here, our interpreter, learned sign language from the university and graduated already. Then after, he looked for a job. He got stuck somewhere, right? So he decided to go back to the university again and learn another course, because he wanted to get a livelihood, wanted to get another job. That ideally means that there are people out there like Wycliffe who haven't gone for another bachelor somewhere and have learned sign language already. So it's a request that NCD, NCPD, and public service, we should come together and have sign language into the structure. These are professional people that need to be put out there for work. When you go to the hospitals, take an example. We have the call centers. You can call that we need an interpreter at such and such a time, and an interpreter will be available. Be it north, be it east, you can have these call centers, right? This should be in public service, and then we have these services closer to our people. But also, the service providers themselves, the doctors, the medical workers. Because my partner talked about the aspect of confidentiality, right? We need to talk one-on-one without the third party, right? Not only that, we don't need a sign language interpreter all the time, because there are very, very sensitive issues. Take an example of testing, and we don't need a third party in this, right? We don't need Wycliffe in this. I just need to talk to the moderator one-on-one, right? We don't need a third party. I, Robert, have an issue with you, right? So the healthy practitioners, in their healthy colleges, I think they need to have the element of sign language, and doctors should be graduating after understanding at least a basic of a language, basic skill in sign language. Yeah.
Well, very interesting there. It clearly states that many of us must now interest ourselves in sign language if their desires are heard and are brought in or factored in by government. I remember one time I was at a police station, and there came this person with the hearing impairment, and the police officer asks, who knows how to interpret, or who can understand this person? She was crying, she was agitated, and it was just drama, because it was very unfortunate that you couldn't find anyone who knew the sign language. But later realized that if you had a mobile phone and typed something, this person would type back. So she kept on pointing at her phone, and all of us thought, maybe it is a phone that has been stolen. Until one said, maybe I know of one who can type. So she began typing, and it was typing, and things were done very well. But imagine if she didn't have a phone, then what would have been the situation? But since we're in this week, Rose, help us understand what are some of the activities that you've lined up to create awareness?
Okay, thank you so much. There are a number of activities, and since the word says Awareness Week, and one of the activities we are here, radio, TV talk show, and there are also other media talk shows, but also we are having press releases, which is also going to happen. And then we are having community awareness, where we go to the community, clean the markets. And then also we shall be having, I think there is also an activity that will take place in Parliament of Uganda, where this will go to the floor of Parliament about International Deaf Awareness Week. But also we are having a health clinic, where people will also go and check other illnesses. But at the end of the day, they will be marching in in Iganga. People will be marching around Iganga town or municipality to make them understand. But also I think there is going to be football match between the deaf people and the hearing community. So there are going to be lots and lots of activities that will be taking place. Thank you.
This brings me now, recently I saw, let's go a bit political. Recently I saw a group of persons with disabilities calling upon representation at YALA, that is the East African Legislative Assembly, that they also wanted to. We've seen at every level of leadership in this country, right from LC1, we have a person for disability. Parliament, you have 5 representatives there. Now, has this leadership or this representation helped address issues of persons with disability, or has it just been a way of creating employment, improving their welfare? Has this really delivered when we still talk about some of these challenges today, with after a number of years of affirmative action? Are we on the right track? Should we call for equity or equality? What have you achieved in terms of representation? And I want to push this to, that is Robert.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to appreciate government, first of all, for having the element of affirmative action, to try and have the element of equity in representation, especially persons with the disabilities in all government structures, right from the villages up to the national level, up to parliament. We have a minister responsible for issues of disability, Honorable Helen Grace Asamo, and we really appreciate government so much, because I remember there's a saying that there's nothing for us without us, right? So if our people are there, which means we're also represented, that is our voice in terms of representation. Maybe the issue is the global attitude, the country's attitude, the society's attitude. But the local leadership that we have is not yet up there on issues concerning persons with disabilities. It's not yet a priority. The laws are in the land are there. We have the laws, very good laws, but the aspect of implementation of these laws is a very missing gap. Because if all this has been done on ground, there wouldn't be any problem. But once you go to the local leadership out there, you know, the districts, you know, the villages, there is a very big negative attitude towards people like us. As you know, very many councillors for disabilities are there. They sit in the councils, but the aspect of reasonable accommodation, Mr. Moderator, we have deaf councillors. Access to interpretation in their council is quite limited. We have people with their physical disabilities, right? They can't access these halls, right, where debates are taking place. They don't have helpers. So all these are challenges that we experience. These are barriers that limit us from performing, that limit us from performing our work. But also, we really appreciate that there is representation. It's a strong voice. We thank government for that. Right, there's very big representation there, and some laws have been amended, and this is all about our voices that are being put out there. A few things have changed. I should appreciate government for that, thank government for that. But maybe we need more. We need more representation, because take an example, Parliament in this entire country, how many do you have persons representing persons with disabilities, right? They are the districts. We only have one person or two representing the entire district, right? At times, even the facilitation for these people to traverse the entire district is quite minimal. Now, you have very many members of parliament who are just having a simple constituency, but then members of parliament have a very big, you know, country that they need to have issues. So I think even the support, even our representation is quite minimal. Yes, we look at our...
well explained. I'm sure these representatives are happy with Robert bringing out some of the challenges that they are facing. Well, in the interest of time, I'll begin with you, Rose. Let me have your final remarks regarding the International Deaf Awareness Week and, of course, issues regarding sign language.
Okay, thank you so much, moderator. First of all, we need to appreciate that International Deaf Awareness Week is very important for inclusion of deaf people. And for me, as the council, we are following and ensuring that we have meaningful inclusion of all persons with disabilities, inclusive of deaf people. And because of that, I also bring out my voice that as members of parliament, we are going to be discussing this, but there is one pertinent thing that is going to take place in parliament this week, and it has coincided with the International Deaf Awareness Week, that honestly speaking, we need to see an inclusive EYALA legislators. And since there is this one deaf person who is a candidate, my appeal to the members of parliament, out of the 9, let's just have this one person. And I'm very sure that it will be one of the greatest achievements that we in the disability movement would be very proud of, to ensure that this one deaf person is included. And that means, it will mean building an inclusive society for persons with hearing impairment. And this is where the sign language interpreters will be included in the EYALA activities. Thank you very much.
Very interesting, good campaigning strategy there. There is only one person, and of course, please, members of parliament, support that person to be among those. Voting is on the 29th, which happens to be Thursday. So we wait and we will see if your call will be heard by members of parliament. Your parting shot, Robert.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm really happy that, of course, we are supporting our people. We speak for ourselves. But when other people speak for us, I'm really so much happy. I request the community out there, sign language is yours. Sign language is yours. Sign language unites us. It's not only for the people, but for all of us. We need to have a good communication. Government moving forward, the health budget, please, we need something, a percentage for disability, especially in the language of sign language and issues concerning deafness. And that's where the deaf people can access health services, because the situation is very alarming in the country, especially in the health department with the HIV and all that. And finally, thank you very much, viewers. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, UBC, for giving us this opportunity. Good morning.
Well, I want to thank you so much. That is Achayo Rose, who happens to be a member of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Thank you for your time. Also, that is Kwanga Robert. Thank you so much for being part of this show. And that is interpreter this morning, Wycliffe Bukenya. Thank you so much for your time. And dear colleagues, let's all support persons with disability to ensure that they can realize their full potential. Remember, disability, we are all vulnerable to it. You never know when you can be a person with any form of disability. But you would love to be able to perform. Sometimes they are gadgets, sometimes they just need interpreters. Let's push for this, for them to achieve their full potential. Disability is not inability. Have a lovely day. God bless you.